So, welcome to Soulful Thoughts from New Zealand. I am your host, Megan Don, teacher of the Mystic Path, both in living and in dying, award-winning author and mentor. We have just begun the new online course, Your Life and Death Journey, Earth Rituals for the Body and Soul. We began with a Celtic Day of the Dead ceremony, and we are now moving through the life and death myths and rituals of some of the earth-based or indigenous traditions, drawing in their relevance for our bodies and souls and birthing new life today. So if you want to join in, please do. All sessions are recorded if you can't make it live. And for more info on this, please go to my website, megandon.life. And now I want to welcome our wonderful guest today, Alice McDowell, author, spiritual director, and retreat guide. She co-founded Light on the Hill Retreat Center in 1991, where she continues to guide individuals and groups on their spiritual journeys. As a professor of religious studies at Ithaca College for 18 years, she taught courses in mysticism, world religions, depth psychology, and women's studies, and received the Dana Fellow for Excellence in College Teaching. Alice has her doctorate in theology from Fordham University and has trained with Sufi and Buddhist teachers, Christian contemplatives, and humanistic and transpersonal psychologists. Her books are Hidden Treasure and her latest, Dance of Light. So welcome, Alice. I'm so delighted to have you with us today.
I am so delighted to be here, Megan.
Yay, great, great. So
I'm a
now,
great admirer of your work. So it's wonderful to talk with you.
Thank you. I know, like minds, it's always a treat, isn't it?
Yes.
That's the best part about doing the podcast and interviews is I get to have some just great conversations and communion with others, you know? So yeah, it's wonderful. Now, your book, Alice, Dance of Light, in this, you very clearly and skillfully describe the steps on the self-realization journey. And you do this by bringing forward the Christian mystics and the traditions of Sufism and Buddhism. So a beautiful blend of these traditions that seem to just dance together and weave together, you know, so naturally. So really the first question I want to ask you was, what was your own inner need to seek out the variety of these teachers? I mean, you know, you have this academic background, so was it an academic curiosity that led you there, or was it, you know, deep soul needs that drew you to the different traditions, or a little of both? I'm just really intrigued to know that need to reach all of these.
Okay. Well, basically, I realized that it's important that religious experience is the most important thing, that the religions were founded usually by an experience, the apostles' experience of the risen Jesus, Buddha's experience under the Bodhi tree, Muhammad's experience in the cave with Gabriel. So I wanted to study that spiritual experience, but I had also wanted to do that personally. And after my father died when I was 11, I started asking those deeper questions. And this led me to going to Mass every day during high school, and then to a Catholic college, and then to Fordham. At Fordham, the professors were very oriented towards world religions and world philosophies. So that got me interested as well. So I kept up with my spiritual practice. And then I felt the need to, I did a Sufi retreat with a guide, and it just came to me that this was a path that I needed to take. This was my further development. And so I still am part of that tradition. But then I read a lot about and did retreats with Adyashanti, who has a Zen Buddhist background, but he's just a researcher of truth. And I liked a lot of what he had to say. And in the Sufi path that I'm part of, you don't have to be part of any religious tradition. It's just deepening where you are. You could have no faith, some faith, whatever. And so it's fine to go study with another teacher and then come back if you wanted to. So that's how the three came together. And I felt I could only write about what I've personally experienced.
Yes, of course. Now, I'm also interested to know, because I also studied comparative religions as part of my university training and studies. And what I found intriguing was the religious studies department was actually gave me more history about the religions. And then the psychoanalytical studies, Jungian studies that I did, and some other shaman studies that I did actually tended to give more, they were really coming into experiential, even in the university environment. So how did that work for you? Did you find any encouragement to pursue the experiential in the university environment?
I did. And I did take some courses in Jung as well. And I had a teacher, Thomas Berry, who is really a pioneer of spiritual ecology. And he talked about all religions. He felt there should be a Bible with all traditions in it. And he said, I don't just want roses in my garden. I want tulips and hyacinths and everything. I want all those religions there. So that gave me a good background. And then I had another professor of mysticism who was on fire with mystical experience. And you just got a sense. And when he taught, you got a sense of what mysticism was really about. I continued daily mass in college, but then afterwards I did more, I started meditation and just took off from there.
Did you have any mystical experience in the mass?
Yes, I think I did. I mean, I did when my first mystical experience, you could say, was in college. And it was after a retreat. It was interesting that those people not going on retreat had to leave the campus. And then people were in silence for a couple of days. And I did that. And afterwards, I went down and had ice cream with my friends, glad to be able to talk again. And that evening, I had an experience of the whole room being on fire. My heart joined with the greater heart. And then I knew that there was something more, a real experience of something more. Yeah. So that was in college. And but I didn't start meditation until later. But you asked about mass. Yes, I would feel a lot of energy there. And I think communion was particularly expression. And it felt like when I was pregnant, that there was something there within me that when I received, it felt like that. It felt like a presence being within me, just as the baby is in the womb.
Wow.
How about you? Did you
Absolutely
have any experience with mass?
Absolutely. Well, you see, I wasn't Catholic. So actually, as a teenager, I was brought up Presbyterian, which I've got to tell you was pretty dry, and had four little old ladies sitting up the front in the church, singing Jesus Loves Me. And I was like, my God, they're going to die in the pew, you know. and so I was fascinated with the ritual of the Mass, you know, that felt like there was something that was incorporating my body, and you know, just all of the, you know, getting up and down and the incense. It felt more embodied, that it was awakening the senses of the body and inner senses. So I actually used to manipulate myself so I could stay at a Catholic girlfriend's house on Saturday night so I could go to Mass. and I loved it. And I eventually became a Catholic when I was 26. I converted, as some Catholics say. Oh my God, you became a Catholic voluntarily? But yes, I did. And like you, Alice, the communion was so sacred, and many experiences there of that unification with something greater, and unification with love, just such an abiding love. And so that, you know, it's like, oh, there's something in ritual and something in the sacred intent, you know. And I think that we're missing that a little bit today. And it doesn't need to be elaborate, it doesn't need to be long, but like you, yeah, there's something for me. It's a big quest for me at the moment, is body. Body.
Yeah. And the unconscious. It's touching on archetypal energies, you know, not just thought processes.
Exactly. Yeah, wonderful. So now tell me, with the book Dance of Light, what's your real aim? What was your real inspiration to write the book?
Well, I had done a lot of work with individuals. I'd done a lot of teaching. And I was kind of in a place of not knowing what to do. It was just kind of a dry place that I went through. And I talk about this as one of the first stages, you know, of the not knowing stage. I'm searching for something. I don't know quite what it is. And then I woke up one morning and I heard a voice saying, write down the wisdom you know. So I said, okay, you know, I'll do it. So that gave me a direction, and I love to write. You probably do as well. And just got up every morning and wrote until it was finished.
Now, can you tell us then, because this is, I think, part of relating to the book, how did you know that that was a voice to follow?
I think that's a really important question. And I think having a spiritual guide or spiritual director is important as far as that goes. And to go back to Mass, there was a priest in my parish who had spent a year in solitude before he had become a priest. And so he was very deep and very knowledgeable. And so that helped a lot. And now I've forgotten my train of thought. Just a sec.
How did you know the voice was
right? And I
one
think
to follow?
A spiritual director, what they do in the Christian tradition, is called discernment of spirits. They discern what the voices are. Are they coming from the ego? Are they coming from, you know, some trauma in the past or whatever, until you get to a point where you know what the deepest voice is. And that's why I often say the spiritual director becomes obsolete, because you don't need that anymore once you've gotten that. But it takes a lot of practice to get there. So that's how I knew.
Yeah.
A certain feeling in the body. There's a certain way it's presented. You could say that, you know, is the truth.
how would you describe the feeling in the body associated with?
It's just kind of a knowing, yes,
Yeah.
kind of feeling.
Yeah, 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 no doubt. I know Teresa of Avila used to say, oh my goodness, the amount of messes I have had to clean up from people's good ideas. Because, and especially I think this is really important for us at this time, because we are being bombarded with so much information, every moment of the day, if you allow it to be that way. And with the internet and news and just, there's just so much. So it's like, that necessity, I think, to take the time to come into a little place of emptiness, so that you start to recognize these voices of knowing, as opposed to a thought, streaming through your consciousness or your mind, and just jumping on it, at any time. So, yeah.
Yeah, and it's a real question I had in writing. Here is information in a way, but that's why I put in a lot of these tales and poetry and that, so that people would have an experience of that, as well as putting reflections at the end of each chapter for people to go and explore themselves.
Yeah, most important. And who would you say are the readers that you are writing for, Alice? Who do you feel would really benefit from the book?
Well, I kind of generalize and say anybody on the spiritual path, and I've taken it's classical. The steps are classical. They're classical in Zen, they're classical in Christianity. And so many of the people that I worked with just didn't have an understanding of where they were, what they were doing, anything else. And I found myself saying certain things to people that I had written in the book, as a way to guide them. Yeah. So that
do you
was...
Sorry. Do you want to give us a little overview of those steps?
I can, yes. The first step, and this is taken from the Zen 10 ox herding pictures, is the bewilderment place. I call it the dark wood from Dante's first stanza. Midway, this way of life we're bound upon, I awoke to found myself in the dark wood where the right road was wholly lost and gone. And many people, you go this around and around a number of times, but that many people that I speak to find themselves there. I thought I knew where I was going. I thought I knew what I was doing was right, but suddenly it all ended and I don't know where I am. So that's the first stage. The second stage is finding the tracks, finding the way. And this could be a book, a teacher, a friend telling you a few things, and you suddenly say, oh, there is a path. In the Zen traditions, you can see the tracks. You don't see the true nature of the ox, but you can see the path. Oh, okay. So that feels a little bit better. And then the next stage, which may come early in the path or much later in the path. None of these, this is not linear, but it's logically linear. Is the awakening stage, where you have an experience that tells you, there's something more here. I can sense it. I can feel it. It's just a glimpse, though. And then there is the purification stage. And I don't know what else to call it. I've called it self-simplification. It's not the greatest word, purification. No one really likes that. No. But it's getting rid of all that doesn't serve you. And it's not only a letting go and detachment, it's also a transformation, because there's part of us that has put energy into habits or traumas or something. We need that energy. So it has to be transformed into something more positive. So that most of us are in that stage for a long, long time, and you go back and forth. There's a dance, see, between all these. Right. So then there's illumination, and that's like the awakening, only lasts longer. And there are the spiritual senses that you talked about, increase in creativity and intuition, all of those really nice things. And but in case you get too puffed up for, hey, I'm real spiritual here, look at all the things that are happening to me, comes the dark night of the soul. And that's where everything is taken away. Even colors can be, there's just nothing at all. And there's many beautiful passages by mystics really eloquently explaining what the dark night of the soul is. And it is to free you from those deep-seated attachments that have maybe think you're better than the rest of the people in your sangha, or you want to be a favorite of the teacher, or anything like that. And John of the Cross says, the purpose of the dark night is to free you from yourself. So once one has gone through that, then logically the next stage is the unitive state, where you're now in that sense of that other state of consciousness all the time. Doesn't mean your personality isn't there, but you are there, and you're in total alignment with the greater all. And from that comes out action.
The mature mystic, excuse me, the mature mystic in the world, I think, is what Teresa calls that. Now, I really want to look at this question of the darkness a bit more, because I also hear, bandied around that people are going through dark night of the soul just when they're actually going through a difficult patch. And it's not really a dark night of the soul. It's a difficult patch.
I totally agree with you.
Because the dark night of the soul, in my experience, is not a difficult patch. It's excruciating. It's excruciating to experience the illumination, and then to experience that exact intensity in the opposite.
Yes. And you've had to experience illumination to do the dark night of the soul. The other is more like the dark wood of not knowing. So can you speak a little bit then to dark wood and depression? I talk about that a little bit, and I've talked with friends who have been really depressed. They can't see, we couldn't experience what's the difference between a dark night of the soul and depression. So I think that research or deeper understanding has yet to be revealed to us.
I know, and it is a fascinating one, because I remember some years ago now, gosh, I think it might have been like 1998 or something like that. It's around that time, and I was pretty darn depressed, and I couldn't I couldn't elevate. I couldn't, no matter what I was doing, and I really prayed, do I need to go on antidepressants? Because this is ongoing, and feels serious to me. But fortunately, I got an answer that was very clear not to. That this was just something I was going through, and it was almost like in preparation for what was coming. you know. So I felt fortunate to have got that particular answer. But I know, you know, there are all sorts of studies and things put forward about the mystics that, you know, they were probably bipolar, they were possibly, you know, this and that, because they had those extreme experiences. You know, Francis of Assisi, and even Teresa would say that she would get incredibly depressed, particularly when she had the knowing of something that needed to, you know, be brought into being. It was like a divine kind of direction, and then it would fall apart. You know, and that happened to her over and over again. And she said she would always get very depressed when it would fall apart, but her way out was complete surrender, because I think she realized in the end her depression was really her egoic self trying to work out how to put it all back together.
Yes.
And it couldn't. So it would get just despondent, right?
That's right. There has to be, I give up.
Yeah, exactly. The complete surrender. And then she said, and then, you know, something would shift, move, and on she would go. And she does talk about how difficult those times are. But she said, I wouldn't change them for the world, because it instilled in me incredible faith and knowing. Incredible faith.
Yes.
So in light of our world today, Alice, are we going through a dark wood? Are we going through a dark night on a greater worldly scale? I mean, if we're having personal dark nights, then clearly we have worldly dark nights.
We do. We definitely do.
So are we in the woods?
I see it more as a purification process for people to realize that what they were searching for or going for isn't where it's at. And it felt like that when we were in isolation in 2020, that was like everybody going on retreat. And when you go on retreat, your stuff comes up. You know, and for a lot of people, some people reacted with anger, some people reacted with depression, you know, some people said, this is great. Introverts, especially, you know, I don't like being around people. Me too. That's what I wrote.
Yeah.
So it's like that everybody was on retreat, you know, and hopefully insights in that have come. There's been some shifts, like you don't have to go to work every day. You could be home. That saves the environment by not getting in your car and driving somewhere, you know? So there are all of these, and in the book, I talk a lot about the different periods when there's been wars or pandemics or whatever, and then the benefit that comes out of them. But usually when you're in it, you can't see that at all. It's just awful.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
And I think we're still there, coming out a little bit now.
Yeah. And I do think that's the other thing about the dark night of the soul, is you don't even know you're in it sometimes. You don't recognize it as a dark night of the soul. You just think you're become disconnected or you no longer feel like it used to be. So it is a really, I think, very interesting mystic discernment of this. Are you in a dark wood? Are you depressed? Are you in a dark night of the soul? And
that's where guide helps.
Yeah, right. Or, of course, then there's the other, which you also speak about, is that the radiance of the divine darkness.
Yes.
And it seems to me that one needs to go through the woods and the dark night of the soul to truly come into that divine darkness. Would you agree on that?
I hadn't thought about it, to tell you the truth. My inclination is to say yes, but I think I'd have to think about that more,
Well,
how those relate, the dark night of the soul and the divine dark, which is beyond the light, that most people feel is the divine, and into that darkness. Yeah, there's a whole different feel to it than the dark night of
Absolutely.
the soul.
Well, the reason I'm saying that is that I've experienced great loneliness and great emptiness in life, that I have found with the spiritual maturity, that if I can really sink even deeper into the loneliness, even deeper into the emptiness, then I come into what I call the all oneness, or that beautiful cosmic womb of emptiness, the full, the abundant emptiness. But it's like, sometimes if I just sit at the you know, the sort of difficult personal level of loneliness and emptiness, then it's just, you know, it's not very pleasant. But if I can keep going, then it opens out.
Yes.
But of course, our natural inclination is to fill up in those times, you know.
That's right. That's right.
Fill up the emptiness.
But I always say, in the emptiness is where the gold is. So just keep going.
Yeah, exactly. Keep going. And I think that takes courage. It takes courage, because you don't know where you're going to end up, you know?
That's right.
You don't, are you going to actually drop yourself down into an even deeper pit of emptiness? Right. Like, oh no, I don't want to do that. But if you have that courage and you can let go into it, it's the most expansive, peaceful, and yet abundant. And for me, I've experienced it as the land of possibility. And I love some of your, you know, that you talk about this, and it's sometimes referred to as the midnight sun or the black light, the radiant emptiness, the radiant divine darkness.
The dazzling darkness.
Yeah.
Yes. Beautiful
Descriptions that you've brought forward in the book. And I think too that really speaks then when you, that's also the place of deep peace.
Yes. And I've guided a lot of people in that. It's easier to have a guide to say, keep going, keep going. All right, you're feeling this. Where is it in your body? Keep paying attention to that, you know, until they get to the place. And they kind of have faith that the guide knows that it's okay to go there, you know?
Right.
Whereas if you're on your own, I mean, let's get out of here as fast as possible.
Exactly. Yeah. And I know that you've got, you know, different quotes in there too by Gangaji. And what does she say? Oh, yes, that the moments of discomfort and unhappiness come, but those moments are always on an ocean of peace. The moment pass, but the ocean of love and peace doesn't go anywhere. I know it to be bottomless, endless, limitless. I know it to be who I am.
I love that quote too. I think it sums it up so well. You know, some people think, oh, if I'm enlightened, reach the stage, I won't have any more problems or anything else, and everything will go very smoothly. And that's not the case. But there is that sense of that underlying peace or presence, despite all the ups and downs, like the waves of the ocean, but there is that depth in the ocean that's always there.
Yeah. And I love the quote of Anthony de Mello where, you know, he suffered from depression, and that's what he said. Before enlightenment, I was depressed, and after enlightenment, I was still depressed, but it didn't matter anymore. You know,
I love that too. Yeah.
no, it's so great. Yeah, because I think that it's such an illusion to think that, you know, the spiritual path is a panacea for human experience. It's quite the opposite. I think it jettisons you even deeper into human experience, you know. But I think the gift is if you can come into that place, right, of no longer good or bad, no longer right or wrong, but, and I think you talk about this, which I love, where you say, for me, the spiritual journey entails a movement from a distrust to a total trust of what is.
Yes.
And that is huge right now, I think, for people. To make that move from a distrust to a total trust of what is. And it is very interesting. It's like that question, right? Do you trust the universe? Do you trust the universal love? And when I ask people that, there's like, sometimes. You can see the faces, you know, it's like, oh. Do you want to speak more on your personal journey with trust?
Well, I think my mind first goes to what I say to other people. Can you look at times in your life when you were in a depression or down or a challenge or something like that? What happened after that? And usually they move on to something better or whatever. And I said, can you build your trust on that? Don't you see how often the universe has come through for you, you know? So I don't know. I've always had a kind of trust. I don't know where that came from or whatever, but I just had a deep spiritual understanding that there is this something more that's benevolent, you know? So I don't think I can say much more about that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. The other stage, which I think is really important, is the humility. And I love this little quote that you have. I walked up to an old man and asked him, what is the audacity of humility? This man had never met me before, but do you know what his answer was? To be the first to say, I love you.
Isn't that beautiful?
That is so beautiful. That is so beautiful.
That's from the Tales of the Magic Monastery, Theophane the monk. And you can tell he's been a deep contemplative, the way he approaches things and thinks about things, something like that, you know. Yeah.
And I love that he's got that, you know, audacity and humility in the same line, you know. It's like, and really when we look at our society, it's true. It's quite audacious to be humble.
Yes. It takes courage.
Yeah, and it's not a natural inclination of our human nature as it stands. It's to be humble.
And you could say the same word with vulnerability. You know, it takes courage and that to be vulnerable. You might well get hurt or something or other, you know, and to really be vulnerable with the right people. They connect with you more. than
Yeah.
if you have it all together.
Oh, yeah.
You know, I mean, we could admire someone who has it all together, but it's
Mm.
really hard to connect with them.
Okay, that's a really, really important point, because I think we've been through a huge spiritual movement of having many spiritual teachers who on the outside look like they have it all together.
Yes.
But behind closed doors, they're like going through life just as, and I don't know how do you perceive that? Why do you think that came into being? Why do you think that was necessary?
Well, people want an ideal. They
Mm.
want something to look up to, you know, and these people feel they need to fulfill that ideal for that person. And really, the ideal is to be human and divine, not just divine.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I know in the past, Alice, it's been interesting that, I've had certain students or whatever, and then this was quite a while ago now, I must say, this isn't recent, but revealing, certain personal struggles, and a couple of people just left. And you knew that it was like, oh my gosh, well, that I can't, that's not what I want. Whereas for others, it's a relief. Because it's like, oh, thank God, I can
I don't have to be like that.
Yeah, and I can have these human experiences and fall apart, and it's okay.
That's right. Yes.
Yeah. And it's a beautiful humility and vulnerability, as you say. And I think that it is becoming more prevalent now, isn't it? In circles of teachers and students. Would you think that's the case?
What has become more prevalent?
The sense of humility and vulnerability and the humanness.
Yes. You don't have to be the guru.
Exactly. It feels to me, thank goodness, that we're at a place where now it's kind of what you've done with the book, with the different traditions, drawing the wisdom out and finding the resonance, the mystic resonance of the sameness. And it feels to me that that's with the teacher's role, the same thing of each person drawing their own inner wisdom out and then sitting in that resonance, in that presence together.
That's beautifully said. Yes. Yes, to sit together in that presence.
Yeah. That's when I really feel that, that when two or more are gathered, it feels really, really a beautiful thing. So I know that we're always learning. We're always, to me, no matter what stage you're on your journey, that we're always evolving. And I'm wondering for you personally, like what is your learning edge right now? Like what is seeking to be born, or what is seeking to evolve through you personally right now?
Well, I think I'm in the don't know stage, because the book is finished. My hidden treasure program, I've left it to others to take over for me, but I think it's more to be more and more a being of light, and to be more and more a presence in the world. I love the last Zen ox herding picture, where Buddha is just walking into town, going shopping, with a gourd on his back. Just very ordinary activity. And then they say, without recourse to psychic powers, trees in his wake burst into bloom. So just his presence transforms the environment. And I really feel that that's where we're headed. And that's more and more growth, more and more presence. You know, this spiritual director I had spent a year in solitude. He'd walk into a hospital and all of the monitors would go back to normal. Somebody who had been ill. And he just, I don't know, that happens.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
so I just think that's, rather than a lot of doing, this
Yeah.
is much more a being and being present and just being with each other. You know? Yes.
I'm feeling that very much too. I'm not feeling in any way inspired to do a lot of action, to create a lot of things. And it is just coming deeper into that peace and into the presence. And I love that you brought that one forward, because actually that was the Buddhist one, because I brought that forward too. I'll just read the whole thing here. Bare-chested, barefooted, he comes into the marketplace, muddied and dust-covered. How broadly he grins, without recourse to mystic powers. Withered trees he swiftly brings to bloom. So yeah, you can really feel that, right? It's in that ordinariness meeting the extraordinary.
Yes.
Yeah. I think it feels like a big call for our world, because there is so much action going on right now in the world. A lot of it is bringing a lot of suffering to people, which is heartbreaking, absolutely heartbreaking. I don't know too if you find this. I find that my heart is being broken more and more and more by the suffering of humanity, which is propelling me deeper and deeper and deeper into that presence.
Yes. When they say, you know, you want to become enlightened, do you want to feel the suffering of the world more and more? You know, that's part of the deal.
Yeah.
Yeah, I find the same thing. It is just heartbreaking. Even with a little bug, I'm broken.
I know.
Guys, you know.
I know. The other night I was watching, you know, we have our kiwi birds here in New Zealand, who are our national icon, and of course are endangered because of all of the predatory, you know, birds and cats and dogs and rats and possums that have been introduced. So there are these incredible people out there trying to, you know, save them, and we have special areas where they can, where it's predator free, but they're out on islands or very caged in places. And I was watching a program the other night where they were going out into the wild and going into the burrow. The burrow is deep in the earth, and they pulled out a male kiwi who was sitting on the egg, waiting for it to incubate and hatch. And so they held him, and then they went back in and they got the egg and they put it in their container. And then he went in again. He said, normally there are 2 eggs. And then the second one, it had hatched, and he pulled out this little tiny kiwi with his little beak, and he was still wet. He must have just come out of the shell. He still had shell on him. But what made me, I sat and I cried, because they took the chick and they took the egg and they just put the father back in the burrow, because and I was just like tears streaming down my face for this poor father who had been sitting incubating. But they said, if they don't do that, those little kiwi won't survive. So they get transported somewhere and they get incubated and then they get looked after and then they get transported somewhere else and then they get transported somewhere else. And I'm just like, these poor, and then I was like, the poor kiwis being displaced. And I was just, it's like, oh gosh. But they were assuring us they had to do this in order that they survived. And I'm like, really? Can we do it another way? So yeah, I'm with you. It's an interesting mystic dilemma.
Yeah. I think it means though that the heart is really getting more and more open.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And do you feel any need to protect your heart, Alice?
I feel if that heart, if one imagines the radiance coming out of the heart, that then it negates anything negative coming in. So the stronger that is, I think Hazrat Khan said something about make my heart as soft as wax so it can feel compassion, and make my heart as strong as a rock so it can withstand the blows that come to it. So both those things are necessary.
But I love that image of the inner radiance.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the inner radiance of the heart coming out, that is your protection. Just that in itself. And you have some wonderful examples. Do you want us to tell us about the Sufi woman who was working with prisoners?
Yeah, that's quite an amazing story. And as I said, if I weren't in the room when she told it and could feel the authenticity, I wouldn't believe it. But she was a woman working with the prisoners, and one of them got released and he came to see her, and she said, I'll go make you some coffee. We can have some coffee. She went into the kitchen and turned around, and there he was with a knife at her, and she held out her hand. She was doing this practice, yakada, which means strength and power. And she put out her hands and the knife bent. And it freaked him totally. He ran away.
Beautiful. I think, doesn't that really, it's a great testament to spiritual practice.
Yes.
And this is something that I think that people really, I think we need to remember is I can't remember who, it might have been Yogananda said, we do our spiritual practice so when bankruptcy and divorce and death come, we're prepared. So you're not left freaking out, or like you don't go into freeze when a knife is coming at you, but your instant response is that practice. I mean, how beautiful that her body, her soul, her mind just instantly went to what she needed, the practice of strength. Beautiful. Beautiful, beautiful. And I think, isn't that it? Without thought, like, oh, let me see, which practice do I need? Could you just wait 1 minute? Let me leaf through my mystic index. Got it. So I love that. And that to me speaks, there's the practice, the embodiment, it was like her mind, heart, soul, and body were in complete alignment with the strength of Allah, or the strength of God, the strength of Yeshua, the strength of Magdalene, and that's, I think, also what we're talking here is those beautiful words of Magdalene in the Gospel of Mary Magdalene. He has called us to this, to become fully human. And I think that's what your whole book is about, isn't it? That's the fully human in all of its divinity and humanity.
Yes. And it reminds me, I think I quoted Hazrat Inayat Khan with this, that the Sufi path, it's not about psychic powers. It's not about learning. It's not like going to the caves and meditation. What's the purpose of the path is to become human, to live a life of love, harmony, and beauty.
There we have it.
Yeah. And that's not an easy thing to do.
No, especially when we're in the times we're in where the exact opposite is raging all around us. But this is the exact times it is needed more than ever. So I would really recommend to the listeners to go to alicemcdowellauthor.com. That's Alice, ALICE, McDowell, McDowell, author.com, to read more about Alice. You can also see about her hidden treasure programs. You can see quotes from her new book, and you can order the books. They're also available on Amazon. So Alice, any last words for us as we wrap up here today?
I think we've covered quite a bit, and it's been such a delightful conversation. You never know what is going to come out with these conversations, you know? And I just love what did come out. So thank you so much for this opportunity.
Oh, you're welcome.
This with you.
Yeah, from mass to bending knives, we've done it. We've covered it all. So thank you so much for your time and your practice, your dedication to the path and pathways, and for your skillful guidance in helping others to in their bewilderment, in their dark woods, in their dark night, in their illumination, so they don't get too puffed up, you know. I think a good guide can always deliver a very good pinprick right at the right time too.
Very true. Very true.
As gently as possible, of course. So until next month, I wish you, dear listeners, a trusting and illuminating journey. Again, alicemcdowellauthor.com. And if you want to join in Earth Rituals for Body and Soul, please see my website, megandawn.life. Bye for now. Arhanui.